It's a miracle. We have made it through the darkest of nights. Thanks to all of our patrons, but especially Hedwig and Carlo. Welcome to 2020 fun.
Hello and welcome to the Probably Bad Podcast, a podcast which is definitely bad. I'm Pencil.
And paper. Today's Probably Bad RPG idea is an urban fantasy campaign where, in the end, it turns out the supernatural doesn't actually exist. I thought we would start 2021 with this one because it's the first ever Probably Bad post.
This is the one that is responsible for all of the things you're hearing right now. It has a whole 24 notes.
But I do really like it as a kind of... It feels kind of obvious at this point, but the idea that it's like a very sort of paranoia kind of thing. Where it's like, oh, these guys are vampires, we need to take them out, we'll kill them all, and then you kill them all, and they were just guys.
Like, it turns out most things will die if you put a stake through their heart. Like, that's not
Like,
a vampire
you just
thing.
stabbed some emos. That's nothing.
You successfully, purged the goth population. Like, to be fair, my interpretation when I originally made it was you show up at, the head vampire's lair for the final battle, and that's when it turns out this has all been an elaborate prank. Just all your friends have got together to convince you that magic is real and you're a sorcerer.
This is Call of Cthulhu, but gaslighting.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably a more accurate term than prank, at the point at which you're convincing someone they've been possessed by Lucifer.
But there is also... I feel like there's something in the idea of a fantasy game that gradually transitions into a sci-fi game.
Yeah.
Which... Just the idea of, there's all these spooks and spirits, but they're actually aliens, which I'm now realizing is multiple Doctor Who episodes.
I think...
But it's a strong concept.
Yeah, to be fair, most of the times I've heard that, it's in a more traditional fantasy sense. I've not seen many of them... Either it's in traditional fantasy sense, or it... Like with Doctor Who, we've already established that it's alien. And I've not really seen the equivalent where it's an urban fantasy, there are vampires and werewolves and so forth going around, and then it's slowly revealed that they're aliens. So I've seen that in high fantasy where it's there's magical items slowly discovered that are actually alien technology. But I don't think I've seen the same thing with more occult kind of urban fantasy horror supernatural.
I feel like it could be quite a fun twist on a Changeling game.
Yeah.
Where it's not the realm of Fae, it's another planet with different rules.
Yeah, you could definitely do something with fairy magic. And it turns out that fairies are actually aliens. Because there's a lot of crossover in fairy stories and UFOlogy anyway.
And there is this sufficiently advanced technology rule.
Yeah. Only sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from a contrived rip-off of the World of Darkness setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that's called. You tell your players that they're playing werewolf. You just play it completely straight until the point at which they're about to transform into a werewolf, and then nothing happens because werewolves aren't real.
I like that. They genuinely believe from the beginning that this thing is real, and then it's just...
You're bitten by
you just need a rabies shot.
Huge unnatural looking wolf under the full moon, and you start feeling mysterious change in your body, and come the next full moon you keel over dead from rabies. And that's the campaign. Give your players rabies, yeah. I think, is what we're coming up with here. Yeah, we're slowly escalating from
that
just
does fit our
disrupt
pattern.
your game to wipe out your game group and go to jail.
Yeah, and just My brain keeps coming back to Call of Cthulhu as an elaborate gaslight narrative, though.
Hmm.
Like, it would have to be done very, very carefully, but I
Yeah.
feel like it could be a really interesting story with like sort of the upper class brainwashing the players who would be more sort of
Hmm.
middle to like
Yeah.
upper working class,
Yeah. Like,
into being like, no, you have to do the things we say, otherwise the creature from the deep will get you. And then halfway through, you realize what's happening, and then you kill all of the posh people.
yeah. Like I feel you could do a legitimate horror based around the monsters aren't real. You're being elaborately deceived into monsters being real. Like, yeah, because going back, going back to Doctor Who or Torchwood, because obviously we all want to talk about Torchwood. Like, there was that
Yeah.
episode of that where it's like they go to this town hunted by monsters, and it turns out it's just sort of the town people in charge of the town who are killing people. I can't quite remember the exact plot, but yeah, like the idea that monsters have been misinterpreted, like the idea of people using monsters as a cover up for their crime and using gaslighting and deception to get people to like do what they want with the sort of fear of monsters. There's definitely like a horror story there.
Yeah, it's like the one good episode of Sherlock was the Hound of the Baskervilles one, where like he thought it was a big ghost dog and it was actually a government
Basically,
conspiracy.
just take any World of Darkness like Sourcebook, but right, but it was actually a government conspiracy at the end of it. That's our idea. Do you ever sort of? Do you ever?
Sorry, there's someone at the
The
door.
government is aware that you're onto them.
Yeah.
Well, paper gets their parcel. Allow me to give you a nice song. Do 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 do. Bonus Patreon content. Doing a little podcast to myself.
A little podcast to yourself.
Yeah, like the sort of other sort of way I could see going with it would be a more kind of, I guess, cryptozoology sense, where there are genuinely like other creatures out there, but the thing is, yeah, discovering that they're not supernatural and are in fact just undiscovered life forms.
Oh, I like that. Like Mothman is real, but he's actually just a really big moth.
Like sort of, yeah, like there are other humanoid species as well as Homo sapiens running around. And it's almost like a demystification game.
That is a monster of the week that I want to be a
Like you
part
get all the
of.
supernatural stuff and it's like, okay, so it can't actually shapeshift because that's ridiculous. So we're just gonna go looking for like some kind of humanoid wolf creature. This is just
I feel like you could maybe make Bigfoot and
Yeah.
werewolves the same thing. Like it's a big hairy man.
So yeah, I agree with you.
That's my new cryptozoology theory.
Yeah, I mean,
Bigfoot is a werewolf.
like I
Prove me
think it's a good
wrong.
idea, but also I love the idea of big hairy man as a supernatural creature. These are like the four core World of Darkness books of werewolf, vampire, mages, and big hairy men. Big hairy men, the Baroning.
I'd play it. But then we know I ran a
Yeah.
Feast of Legends game and therefore have no taste in RPGs.
Yeah, I feel like if paper says that they will play it, that is possibly a criticism of your RPG.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I say I'll watch a film, you need to take it with a big pinch of has willingly watched Plan 9 from Outer Space about 5 times.
Yes. So I feel before we go into like planning the factions of the Big Hairy Men RPG, they include live in the woods and like shave except on a full moon.
The
I
narrates.
believe we have questions.
Yes. If you have a question, you can email. I forgot the email. You can
Email
email.
somebody.
What is email?
Isn't it just Probably Bad Podcast?
Yes. If you have a question, you can email probablybadpodcast@gmail.com. Or messages on Tumblr at probablybadrpgideas. So the first question, these are all anonymous. First question is, how to find a D&D group? Wrong answers only.
Terminally.
Explain.
No. Find your RPG group terminally. I feel like the best way to do it is you take a copy of Volo's Guide to Monsters and you just leave it in a bear trap. And then you just sit and watch from the woods.
But what if the person flicks the book out with the bear trap with a stick, or are they then too wily to play with? Because they'll solve all your puzzles too fast.
Like, the thing is, it's sort of testing their puzzle solving ability. So if they're caught by the bear trap, then you don't invite them to your group. But if they think to bring a 10-foot pole every single place they go in case there's a bear trap, then you know that they're suited for D&D.
I like it.
I think this is Sorry.
No, you go.
I think this is building towards build an actual dungeon full of traps and monsters, which I guess in this context are just angry animals put in your dungeon. And anyone who
Big hairy men.
fill your basement with bear traps and angry men, and like anyone who survives going into your basement gets to be in your D&D campaign.
So this is terminally. This is Saw.
Yeah. I mean, like the Saw movies got weird. I can see a D&D themed filament.
What you do is you go into your local game shop with some small tracking devices. You just slip them into people's pockets, and then you can find them wherever you are. You can always find a D&D group.
The best part is you don't have to tell them they're a D&D group. They can just be sitting there, like, reading a book, and then you just climb in through their window holding character sheets. Hello, it's RPG time.
You ring up 5 consecutive phone numbers and say, "Hey guys, you want to play a D&D?" And if they say no, then you need to pick some different phone numbers because these ones suck.
I mean, there's plenty of phone numbers.
Yeah, they're theoretically infinite.
You get on a bus, and you put a bomb on the bus so that if the bus goes below 50 miles an hour, it explodes. And then where you're like, okay, we're stuck on this bus journey for a while. Who wants to pass the time with a game of D&D?
If the bus goes below 50 dice rolls an hour. So I feel like what you're basically saying is find the tackiest film you can and then copy it and then play D&D with the survivors.
Yes, it perhaps sort of indicates my point that I only know that the 50 miles an hour bus thing is a film reference and not what film it is to. Like, I only know it as a reference. And yeah, so I feel that's just choose the worst reference to the worst film you can and recruit the survivors.
Go and throw a ball around on the roof with a guy named Mark, and whoever comes up to join you is your D&D group.
I think with a room reference, I think that's the sign it's now time to move on to our next question, which is also anonymous. How do you know when a sandbox campaign is over?
When the cat shits in it.
I hope that was a help.
I'm sorry.
I hope that was a
I had
helpful answer.
to get it out, you know?
Like, I think generally, if there's nothing left for the players to kill, then the sandbox game is over.
So you're saying the game can just keep going until everyone on the planet is dead?
Yeah. Like, based on the sandbox campaign's opening, the general rule is to, like, the players destroy everything. Like, if there's anything in the setting left unseduced and / or unburnt down, then the game's still going. But, like, to give an actual answer, I think with sandbox game, it really is just a case of until people stop having fun.
Yeah, because I feel like running a sandbox game is basically all about just placing various threads in front of your players, and they'll follow some and leave some, and you can like escalate some of them or just say that they resolve themselves, and it basically finishes when all of those threads are tied up.
Like, yeah, I think it's basically, do you feel that there's more you can do in this world? And does it look like your players are interested in doing more in this world? Which isn't, which is a very vague answer. But you didn't go to this podcast for good advice.
Yeah, I think it's basically either the players stop playing or you run out of ideas.
Which I guess you could argue is the point at which any campaign ends.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of campaigns end before the end, if you get what I mean, just because like scheduling happens. It's this is making me a little bit sad,
Yeah.
but it's an issue.
I mean, yeah, I think it's that campaigns are like, I think this one of Advanced Sandbox campaigns is like a big campaign. It's like it's a lot easier to end a sandbox campaign if it's clear the game's not working, or at least it's a lot easier to do it satisfyingly than it is to end like planned campaign.
Yeah, it's like I ran a campaign for the group that pencils in, which it went from like I think level 3 to level 13 or something like that. And like I think we all wanted to do more with it, but it just felt like, yes, this is where these characters have ended up. This is where this world has ended up. So the campaign stopped.
Yeah, I think it's always important, and it's something I have problem with, like my games, is not to try and push the campaign past the point that the story is over. Like, don't do a supernatural, I guess.
Yeah. But I think you can tell we're recording this at the end of 2020.
Yeah.
We're just getting very like introspective.
I think the important thing is like to accept the collapse of society, build a little hole and lie there and cry.
I mean, there is very much a feeling of loss when a big campaign finishes. It's weird.
Yeah.
But then you get to start a new campaign. And if you're lucky enough to have a group with more than one DM in it, you get to play instead of running the game for a bit. While you come up with another big game that will make you very happy and then sad when it ends. It's the circle of dice.
So to answer your question, accept the impermanency of role-playing games. Acknowledge that all things pass. Everything has a time and everything has an ending. And that leads us to our last question, which is also anonymous. None of you have identities, presumably because it's 2020. What's a character you never got a chance to play?
Oh god, so many. I have a problem where I make D&D characters when I'm sad.
Yeah, mine would be a competent version of myself.
You've definitely played that.
I have.
Because Nick ran a campaign where we all played basically just competent versions of ourselves with magic powers.
I mean, actually, I don't think I was in that one. So no, I have never been a competent version.
Were you not? Oh no!
But yeah, I think. What characters have I never played? I tried making a character for Nobilis, and that landed a problem that I was making a character for Nobilis.
That is an issue.
I think it was like. I was trying to do like. What was I doing? I can't remember. This is a very unhelpful answer, and I realised that as I'm saying this, you're probably like doing a reverse subscription to the Patreon where you take money off us once per month. But so, Paper, you have characters.
I think the one that I sort of think about most is probably I made a little gnome wizard whose name was Bimpnotin because it was one of the names in the book. And she was this little old lady that was basically a quack doctor, and she went from town to town with her friends selling just fake medicine and being a general con artist. But we only really got one session because, things happen. But I really want to bring her back and just be a tiny little sleazy con artist again.
It's an amazing name.
Yeah, I just kind of grabbed it out of the book because I didn't know anything about the setting. She didn't like her name though. She just went by B.
I mean, that's what I'm calling any children I have. Like, either in terms of being a parent of or just like looking after for an afternoon.
Noted.
I will name all your children Biffnoffin. I don't think that was the name. I think I'm just evolving into gnomish gibberish.
Each of them just gets a different gnomish gibberish name, so you can still tell them apart.
Like, children are basically gnomes.
They're small, they like to fiddle with things.
And they're,
yeah.
And they're magic.
And some of them live in the forest.
Yeah. Gnomes are just children which have been released into the woods. Gnomes are just free-range children.
You're aware that feral children are a thing, right? Are you saying gnomes are just feral human children?
The feral human children have learned to make ridiculous hats. And that's where gnomes come from.
Okay. I do just have a whole list though. Like, I have this one character I really want to play who is a sad dad. Like, the video game trope of the sad dad. He's I think it's called the Way of the Drunken Master monk. Because he's a sad dad and drinks all the time.
Yeah, that's.
And he also has 8 knives. Like, his weapons are his fists and his knives and his sadness. And I haven't even got to play one session with him, and I really want to. I want to put him in some like big campaign arc. He doesn't even have a name. He's called Knife Dad, and I love him.
Does he need a name? I would play a video game that's just Knife Dad. It's like a Mario thing where like you have like dozens of children and they've each been kidnapped by a different like monster, and you were drunken Knife Dad. Needs to go stab them. I'm laughing because I realised it's not Mario plot at all.
Is a Monster Factory thing, but I made this guy a while ago, and I don't know. I've been in a couple of campaigns that have started since then. It just hasn't quite fitted. I need the right moment for Knife Dad to really shine.
Yeah. Like, what you need to do is you originally make another character, and then at the point at which dramatically convenient, they pull off their mask.
I make another character, they die, and then my next character is Knife Dad, who's that character's dad.
Hmm.
And then if Knife Dad dies, is Knife Granddad. It's just Knife Dad all the way down.
And then Knife Great Granddad, who's a ghost. Knife Great Granddad is like just a knife floating in the air being held by a
That
ghost.
would be a good excuse to play a revenant. Like,
Because
all of
most-
my line have been killed, so I'm back from the dead to avenge them.
Well, let's just let you kill this guy, and then like another revenant pops up, and you kill that revenant, and then another revenant pops up to avenge the first revenant.
Are they all slightly bigger each time, like Russian dolls?
Yeah. Each of them has like one more knife than the last one.
Well, you might have killed me, Johnny 3 Knives, but have you met my dad, Johnny 4 Knives?
I like this like reverse surname thing they have here.
It's a nickname. The
They're all
surname
called
is
Johnny.
Stabbington. Obviously.
I guess to answer your question, Johnny Four Knives Stabbington, which is my answer to all questions from now on.
On that note, I think
that's about as much like stabbings as we can fit into a podcast.
so. Thank you for listening. As Pencil said, we do have a Patreon, probably bad RPG ideas. If you want bonus episodes, homebrew, access to a Discord server where we do sometimes play games, largely based on probably bad RPG ideas. The last one was great fun.
We don't, I'm afraid, have the anti-Patreon where you get money from us.
No. But yeah, we have that. And the email, which I did remember eventually because it's just probably bad podcast. I am very tired. It is the 20th of December 2020. It's been a year, you guys. But you'll be listening to this in 2021, where maybe things will be slightly better, maybe?
Or like that's when the aliens invade.
One of the two. So have a good year, but have a probably bad day.
Do 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 do.